right, so once we've done the planning, we've gone to day 3.
Um, a very important thing to understand is your customers. Now customers evolve in a life cycle point of view. They evolve demographically. There's a very simple model we use across pretty much every category, which has been around for about 40 years, called the AIDA model. The AIDA model goes from essentially non-awareness, people don't know about you or your product or your service, to an awareness.
Yeah.
From that, and that's the expensive part. That's the advertising, the promotion, the online, the direct marketing aspects. That's the expensive part of the process.
Yeah.
You then want to get some interest.
Okay.
So if the offer is articulated effectively with the right USP and the right language, you generate some interest. From that, you want then to get some desire. So I want to talk to you. I want to test your product. I want to drive your car. I want to taste your cola.
Yeah.
And then there's some action. So from that, you have an engagement, and then you move to loyalty, and then you move to super loyalty. So as the progression people go through psychologically, and when we're talking to startup businesses, for example, their awareness is 0.
Yeah.
They get a bit concerned about the cost of building awareness in a particular category. So that's where the expensive parts. That's a bit of the scare for some people.
So can you just give me an example, like in this day and age with the internet being so strong, what sort of campaigns would you put in place to build awareness?
It comes down to the previous discussion. What's your objectives? Who's your target market, and what's your offer?
Right.
If you think back, I'll take you back 15, 20 years ago, the Hyundai launched in Australia.
Right.
Hyundai was a very old Korean brand. They entered the market in Australia with the Hyundai Excel. You're old enough to remember the Excel, David.
I do.
12999 drive away. They knew that the highest next car up was the Ford. They were selling for about 16 grand. So what Hyundai did, they built a network of dealerships aligned to the current network of, I think, Ford and Holden. They launched the car with a massive campaign on, in those days, radio and TV.
Yeah.
They invited consumers to come into their showrooms, and they drove the Hyundai Excel, and they got a free CD of top 20 songs.
Okay.
So they went through that awareness thing through massive media. They created interest by saying, come in for 12,999. They got desire through the CD, and they had a very high conversion rate. Now, Hyundai is now number 2 in Australia. Number 3 after Holden and Toyota.
Wow.
So they've really done a good job on that AIDA model.
Okay, great.
The second thing that we think about is the involvement. If involvement is really how involved is your customer in buying your product. If you can imagine buying a paper or a bottle of milk or a carton of milk every morning versus buying a car or a house or a investment property, the level of involvement in a very low commodity product such as a carton of milk versus buying a house is opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
So if it's a very highly involved purchase, people need to have a lot of information.
Yes.
So a really complex website, a lot of information, a lot of communication. If it's a low involvement model, such as a bottle of milk or a newspaper, it's just about brand awareness.
Okay.
Don't need much information. So you've got to think about that in terms of the consumer processing of that information.
Right. Okay. So how do we get our clients involved? Can you give us some examples of the smaller business sort of engagement models? What sort of things have you been using with clients successfully?
There's been a real shift the last 5 years to online.
Yep.
We've traditionally done, for a startup business, I can quote, say, a chair manufacturer we're working with. 5 years ago, it would have been developing a brand and a logo and a brochure and some direct marketing material and a catalogue.
Yep.
Now it's developing a brand and a logo, an online presence, a LinkedIn presence. We're going to post some of these items on architectural portals. So it's because people are now accessing the website, the web astronomically higher than 5 years ago.
Yep.
We've moved away from traditional, what we call offline, to a lot more online things to give people immediacy.
Yeah. Okay. So really, the online side has really made a total shift in the media.
Correct.
Which means the content that we're providing has to be much more dynamic.
That's right. So inquiry forms, blogs, newsletters, those things that interact with people are very, very important.
Right. Okay. So after involvement, what happens next?
Well, you have to think about what factors affect purchasing. Is it psychological? Is it rational? Is it lifestyle based? Is it demographic? So once you've analysed your customers and what they're looking for, you have to understand how they purchase and why they purchase.
Okay.
So that's very important. In terms of, we've seen a real shift in the last 10 years away from transactional marketing to relationship marketing.
Right.
So customer relationship management is a key term. The bulk of that is a database.
Right.
So when we go into clients, both young and new and old, well, the first thing we'll do is look at their database
Mm-hmm.
and how they leverage that to communicate. So the keys to customer relationship management are understanding your database, have as much detail as you can in that database,
Yep.
Regular communication that's relevant.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be too salesy. It has to be newsworthy, has to have some interest to them,
Yep.
And it has to reinforce your brand.
Yeah, I know one of the perspectives I use with a database is that it's one of the biggest assets in a business. And every time you communicate with that database, you're either increasing the value or decreasing the value of that asset.
Yeah, exactly right.
So getting too salesy means you're diminishing the value as people become less receptive to your offers.
Yes.
Nurturing those people and providing lots of value and information so you're making the relationship stronger actually increases the value.
That's right.
And one of the exercises I get some of the clients to do is actually quantify and actually put a dollar value next to different levels of engagement.
Yes.
So an email address, unqualified, is worth maybe 50 cents.
Yes.
So once someone's been on the database for a year, if they've been engaged, they're now worth maybe $10.
That's right.
And so we can look at them as different value all the way through. And that's really probably, I think, the easiest way to encapsulate what the value of that database is.
That's right. And the incidence and the intensity of that relationship can reflect itself in how you talk to them, how often you talk to them, what gifts you might give them for Christmas or Easter or whatever those things might be. So we recommend very heartily that people understand those dynamics.